Get started. Good afternoon and welcome to our program, Retirement and Mental Wellness. My name is Lydia Arnold and I'm the Aging Transitions and Volunteer Connect 55 Plus Specialist with the Orange County Department on Aging. On behalf of the department and the Mental Wellness Senior Resource Team, I would like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to the SRT members, to the aging staff, and to our director, Janice Tyler, for your continued support and guidance. The idea of retirement is something that most of us look forward to. When we think of retirement, we may initially think of traveling, spending time with grandchildren and loved ones, or simply not having to set an alarm and sleeping in. However, there are often negative feelings that come with retirement, such as depression, anxiety, and loneliness that can impact our overall mental well-being. These negative feelings often stem from the decrease in social supports that occur after retirement, leaving us feeling isolated and unsure what to do with this newfound time. Today's program will provide valuable information about overcoming challenges related to retirement and how these challenges impact our mental well-being. Retirement and mental wellness will also explore discovering creativity, purpose, and embracing this new chapter. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Lydia Arnold, myself, again, is our ATVC 55 Plus Specialist with the department. She's a gerontologist that has worked in aging for over 7 years. Carl Nordgren is a novelist, entrepreneur, and creativity missionary who taught creativity and entrepreneurship courses for 14 years at Duke University. Mike Komives is our employment specialist with the Department on Aging and taught job searching courses for mature adults at Durham Tech for 14 years. Last but not least, Alison Smith is our volunteer program coordinator with our VC 55 Plus division for the Department on Aging, with 8 years of experience with volunteer recruitment and program development. Thank you all to our speakers for agreeing to present for us this afternoon. And we will be recording this program, so if you're uncomfortable with your camera being on, you can turn that off, and it also will help with our connection if your camera is off, so feel free to do so. For today's topics, we will discuss the challenges of retirement and how these challenges impact our overall mental well-being. We'll talk about finding your creative renewal after 55 and how to discover and unlock your inner creativity. We'll talk about identifying your strengths and how to recognize what brings you joy and what you enjoy doing. And lastly, we'll discuss becoming involved and putting those strengths to good use, whether that's starting a new career, volunteering, or something else. I'd like to start this program off tonight with one of my favorite quotes. It's from activist Frances Lear. It says, "I believe the second half of one's life is meant to be better than the first half. The first half is finding out how you do it, and the second half is enjoying it." Frances Lear, she was an activist for the women's movement and a civil rights movement and for mental health as well. And I think her quote really captures not only what retirement is supposed to be like, but what our later years in general are supposed to be like. I think we truly have this wisdom from our first half of life that can make retirement our second half an adventure. So what is retirement? Retirement is a major life transition in the second half of life. There's a lot of mixed emotions that come with retirement. Sometimes they're happy feelings. Sometimes they're sad feelings, but more often than not, they're both. So initially, you may be feeling like the picture on the left. You may be excited for all of this new time, this freedom. Maybe you want to discover a new craft, a new hobby. It's what you make it. But usually after a few weeks pass by, after you've retired, and now you have, you're waking up, you're not going to work every day, you're having these negative feelings that can be associated with retirement. And a lot of times this can lead to depression, You can feel really lonely and socially isolated because you're not around the people you were working with all this time. You're not having the same routine of getting up, going to work, and seeing these same people. You're not in that same routine that you've been in for most of your life. A lot of folks also struggle with a poor perception of usefulness. So they're not feeling like they're serving a purpose anymore. And a lot of retirees also suffer with loss of identity. Maybe you were a controller or, what have you for 30 plus years, and now you're no longer that role. So maybe you miss going to work or miss having something to do. I feel like you just, you've lost your purpose. So why is there a negative relationship between work status and depression or other negative feelings? Well, the most common stressor post-retirement is financial stress, but this is significantly increased when there's also no social supports to compensate for this loss. So once we go through retirement or we lose our job, we have this significant decrease in our social supports. So why is that? Well, we have this huge shift in our social networks that occurs. So again, we're no longer going to the same routine. We're no longer going to work every day. We're no longer around all these people. We're usually at home. We're socially isolated now. So maybe you're feeling that isolation. You have a decreased self-esteem. Maybe you were a CEO or a director of a company. Maybe you just really enjoyed what you're doing. And now you're no longer doing that. So now there's this interruption in your sense of self. So you just no longer feel like you have a purpose. And that can leave us feeling very, very detached from society. So how do we combat these negative feelings that occur with retirement? Leisure activities. So leisure activities can help individuals better adjust to life after significant life transitions, specifically with retirement. Leisure activities have been proven to improve quality of life, help maintain our cognitive function, and also help us successfully adjust and transition to retirement. So why does leisure activities help with these three things? Well, they keep you active, they keep you moving, they keep you involved and socially interacting with others, which all in all helps us combat these negative feelings like this loneliness, this isolation. And it also contributes to our sense of purpose. Those that are the happiest and most satisfied post-retirement reported that they found a clear sense of purpose. So they found their why. Why are they getting up in the morning? What reason do they have to get up today? What makes them happy? What are they looking forward to? What difference are they making? So what leisure activities contribute to our sense of purpose? Well, there's a huge list of activities you can do. The list goes on. And some of them could be reading, walking, joining a book club, starting a garden class, starting a pottery class, walking with a friend a few times a week. Maybe you worked in corporate for most of your life, but you always wanted to work with a nonprofit for a cause that you were passionate about. Maybe you'd like to look into volunteering. You can volunteer with your local community center, with senior center, with churches, food banks. The list truly goes on with getting involved. So what do I do now? Well, retirement looks different for everyone. You may want to travel with your spouse. That may be how you want to spend your retirement. Maybe your mother is aging, and now that you're no longer working, you have more time to be able to care for her and spend time with her. Maybe you just want to spend more time with your grandchildren. Whatever it may be, retirement provides an opportunity for a renewed sense of purpose. Retirement is when you can do what you want to do instead of what you have to do. So now I'm going to turn things over to Carl, and he's going to talk about some really cool stuff that happens with our brains after age 55.
Great. Thank you very much, Lydia. Hello, everybody. I've got some really good news. Might be the best news you've gotten in quite some time. And I'm going to tell you some tips about how you can make this good news into even better news. You see, we're all born, each and every one of us, everybody on this Zoom collectively, we're all born with remarkable creative and entrepreneurial qualities that don't go away, right? They're part of our core human condition. I love speaking to folks this age group because it's easier for me to reference the 1960s space race. Boy, I remember it really, really well. I got so excited about the space race. Well, the relevance to it for us today is that when Kennedy challenged NASA to send humankind to the moon by the end of the decade and back again, NASA realized that they had to invent everything. They had to invent everything. They had to create the alloys for the spaceship. They had to create the guidance systems, the communication systems, the food delivery systems. Everything needed to be created, right? They had no idea how they were going to accomplish this mission. And so they realized they needed to hire all the most creative and entrepreneurial scientists and engineers that they could find in order to successfully take on this audacious challenge that Kennedy had delivered to our nation and to NASA. And so NASA developed an assessment tool, a tool that was going to measure a core creative cognitive quality, one's ability to find lots of solutions to a problem, right? Lots of different categories of solutions to a problem. They had an assessment tool developed that would measure that quality of one's thinking, and then decided that before they used it in the recruitment process to make sure they were hiring creative and entrepreneurial scientists and engineers, they decided to see how accurate this tool was. And so they first assessed the creative qualities of their current employees, of their current scientists and engineers. And they were quite pleased with how accurate it appeared to be, because those scientists, those engineers who were already coming up with the big breakthrough innovations, they scored by far the best. And so NASA identified the top 5% of the performers on that assessment tool. Internally, they identified them as creative geniuses. Of all the scientists and engineers who took this assessment tool, the top 5% performers on this tool were called creative geniuses. Well, the researchers who created this tool were really impressed with how accurate this tool seemed to be. And so a few years later, after they delivered it to NASA, they took this tool, made only the slightest revisions of language so that it could be useful, understood by 4 and 5-year-old children. And they assessed the creative qualities of 4 and 5-year-old, 1,500 4 and 5-year-old school children using the same assessment tool that NASA was using. And 98% of these kids, 98% of them performed at NASA's creative genius level. All of us at the age of 4 and 5 have got such remarkable creative abilities, such remarkable creative qualities that culture and society has not yet blunted. And we perform as creative geniuses at the age of 5. The researchers were intrigued. They followed this cohort and measured them again in their teens, measured them again in their late teens, measured them again in their 20s, where they found that only 4% of them were now performing at NASA's creative genius level. The researchers' conclusion was that these folks had gone to school where they were taught that there's only one right answer to every problem, and there's only one way to get to that right answer, and that therefore the researchers concluded that school teaches us to be less creative in our thinking. I think the researchers were correct, but I don't think the researchers went far enough. There's so much in our culture and our society that is asking us to bend our thinking to the status quo. It's not just simply schools. Well, I did, as Lydia mentioned, I did teach at Duke University for 14 years to undergraduate students who would immediately shake their head in agreement that yes, indeed, the way that they were going to maintain their maximum grade point average, they realized in junior high and high school, so they could get into Duke, they could get into Harvard, was to park their creativity in the back lot and play the academic game. But folks, I saw over the course of a semester time and time again that these creative qualities haven't gone away. They're just waiting to be revived. They're just waiting to be in a situation where people are confident and feel safe and where they can develop these creative qualities, and they do, and it happens. And what we've got going for us, on top of this natural creative genius that we're all born with, what we've got going for us is that there are two major biological changes that happen to our brains somewhere right around the age of 55. These changes invite a creative resurgence. They invite a creative renewal. They're working to help you become more creative, and you're not even having to do anything about it. And here's the first one. The first one, folks, is the understanding that between neurons in our brains, which neurons make up our gray matter, between neurons, the connective tissue, the axons that carry electrochemical signals from one neuron to the other, right? That's the white matter that makes up our brain, is that connective tissue. Well, those axons are coated with a fatty substance that's called myelin. Those axons that carry a signal from one neuron to the other are coated with a fatty substance that's called myelin. We're born with very little myelin, but waves of myelin occur over the course of our lifetime. And that's important, folks, because myelin, as it coats the axon, improves the performance of the communication between one neuron and another. Now, initially, this myelination focuses on our sensory and motor control areas when we're very, very young. That makes sense, right? A young person, an infant, needs to be able to stand. An infant needs to be able to have a sophisticated understanding of the environment around them. So that's the initial focus for myelin. Folks, the very first wave of myelination doesn't come to the prefrontal cortex until they're in their until their early teens, right? So that explains so much about childhood behavior, is that their prefrontal cortex hasn't in effect been completed. But each wave of myelination that occurs accelerates the communication transmission from one neuron to another. As a side point, we are always told to eat omega-3 fatty acid foods because they're good for our brain. Well, you now know specifically why they're good for your brain. Omega-3 fatty acid foods repair and restore the myelin that surrounds and protects and improves the communication of the brain with itself. The researcher out of UCLA who realized that this is what's going on, his quote is, "So there's a biological explanation for wisdom. Somewhere there in our mid-50s, as the myelination completes, our brain is communicating much more effectively, much more efficiently with itself than it ever has before." The second big change that's occurring, folks, these are working together to make it just so simple for us to engage in a creative renewal now at this part of our life. The right hemisphere of our brain is the rational, the linear side of our brain. The left hemisphere, the right is the nonlinear, side of our brains. The intuitive, the nonlinear side is the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere is the analytical, logical. Early on, neuroscientists were suggesting that the right hemisphere is where all our creative thinking takes place, right? And that was sort of a common understanding for a couple of decades, that you want to get into your right hemisphere if you want to be a creative person. Well, now we've come to understand, wave after wave of research has helped us understand that if you want to be your most creative self, if you want to be in your most creative brain, you want your two hemispheres integrated. You want the intuitive dancing with the analytical. You want the non-linear playing with the logical. Well, here's what happens, folks, when we're 55 plus. Dr. Cabeza, a neuroscientist out at Duke University, and I just have to pause for a second to point out, isn't it wonderful that there's a neuroscientist whose last name is Cabeza? He developed some high-level problems, some language, memory, spatial management, math, some high-level problems, recruited two different groups, recent college grads, high-functioning seniors were recruited. He studies, he reads their brains as they're solving these problems. College grads always solve the problems with a really very specific local area of the brain, just something going on in the left hemisphere, isolated from the rest of the brain, some portion of the right hemisphere, isolated from the rest of the brain. But we high functioning seniors solve the same problems networking across both hemispheres. We naturally get into our integrated brain, our most creative brain, when taking on high level problems, when taking on challenges of the sort that Dr. Cabeza has developed for us. Both of these changes, folks, happen without us doing a thing. right? The myelination occurs and our brains are becoming much better at communicating from neuron to neuron. And our two hemispheres become much more integrated in our creative problem solving thinking. Now, Dr. Cabeza has said, it's not like we all of a sudden get some superpower, and that's what causes our two brains, our two hemispheres to integrate. He says it's probably something more likely, was there a weight that when you were 20 years old, you could lift with one arm? And now that you're 60, you have to lift it with two arms. He said that's probably what's going on here, is the brain is awesomely good at doing a workaround to maintain the cognitive functioning that you're calling for. It just so happens that in this particular case, that workaround has other additional benefits for us, in that it results in these integrated brains. And so what we've known for some time, we now know why. For some time, we've understood that our crystallized intelligence, back in the 70s, social scientists, as they were studying the way that we think, identified two very distinctive ways that we think. Fluid intelligence, that's our ability to quickly find the pattern of what's going on in this new situation. We're really good at that when we're 30. We're really good at that when we're 40. That starts to fall off after the age of 40. But crystallized intelligence, this ability to mine our databases of knowledge and experiences and education that you've built up over your lifetime, to begin to mine those databases for new relationships, for new insights. This crystallized intelligence improves as we approach 50. It really starts to get really strong as we pass 50. And neuroplasticity, right? The fact that our brains will become what you want your brains to be as long as you're using them to a particular purpose. Neuroplasticity means that crystallized intelligence continues to improve well into our 70s. Steve Jobs, when he was asked what creativity is, he said creativity is just simply connecting the dots. So make sure you have lots of dots. Well, folks, you've got lots of dots. After 60 years, you got lots of dots. After 70 years, we got lots of dots. After 80 years, we have lots of dots. And our brains are getting much better at connecting them. Right? The myelination means that neurons are speaking to each other much more effectively, much more efficiently, with much more speed. Our two hemispheres are integrating and networking and working together. So we're filled with dots. And somewhere in this age that we've accomplished, that we've achieved here, we are much, much better at connecting the dots. Our brains are much, much better at connecting the dots. A longitudinal study out of Mills College in Oakland took some college graduates back in 1950, and they're measuring them every 10 years. They're measuring their leadership qualities. They're continuing to do so now. They're in their 70s. And what they're finding is that as we get into our 50s and 60s and 70s, we're so much better at dealing with ambiguity than we were when the 65-year-old version of you is much better at dealing with ambiguity than the 35-year-old version of you was. The 65-year-old version of you is much, much better at holding two conflicting ideas and still making decisions. The research shows that that gets better every decade. And we're a whole lot better at affect optimization, is what the researcher calls it. I call it situational intelligence, right? Each and every one of us is filled with so many different facets as to who we are, so many different aspects of who we are, so many different personality expressions that make up who each and every one of us are. And what we get to be really, really good at when we're in our 50s, 60s, and 70s. I wish I was good at this when I was in my 30s. I wasn't. I'm good at it now, is to understand which portion of me I should be bringing right now. Right? Is this a time where I should be bringing my leadership qualities to the table? Or is this a time for me to not do so and stand back and realize, no, this is really a good opportunity for me to serve? Should I be humorous in this moment, or should I be serious in this moment? Right? We're much, much better at bringing our situational intelligence to the situation that we're facing when we get to be 55 plus, because our brains are communicating with itself much better than they ever had before. So let me ask you, are you creatively entrepreneurial? I've been linking those two words together for 20 years now. I've been linking those words together for 20 years because 20 years ago, when I first started doing this teaching, what I heard time and time and time again were people who were declaring that they weren't creative because they weren't artistic. And if they weren't seeing themselves as artistic, they were insisting that they weren't creative. Or if they hadn't started a business, they weren't entrepreneurial. Right? So I have made it a practice for some time now to not define this language. People ask me, when I first started teaching creativity, somebody said, well, what do you mean by creativity? I felt, wow, you sort of called me out. I don't have a real quick definition for you about what is it that I mean to be creative. And here I am teaching you to be more creative, and I can't give you a definition about what it means to be creative, but I realized my instincts were right. I realized that my instincts were right. There's a wonderful quote from Goethe, Johanna Wolfgang Goethe, who says, thinking is better than knowing. Thinking is better than knowing. That might not always be true, right? We want our engineers to know precisely how to build that bridge. But when it comes to being creatively entrepreneurial and what it means to be creatively entrepreneurial, I think Goethe is exactly right. It's much more useful for you to be thinking for yourself about what it means to be creative, what it means to be entrepreneurial, what it means to be creatively entrepreneurial. It's much better for you to think for yourself about what that can mean for you than it is for me to give you a definition of it, right? You want to construct, you don't want to consume, you don't want to consume my understanding, you want to construct your own understanding. And because in a changing world, right, where everything around us is always changing, everything around us is always changing, and often in quite unpredictable ways, just doesn't seem to be to me to make sense that we would insist on there being a single fixed definition of what it means to be creative or creatively entrepreneurial when everything around us is changing, right? When everything else is around us is changing. So the situational intelligence that we're really good at when we're in our mature years, the situational intelligence, let's make it a situational and creative intelligence. Let's develop a self-image of ourselves as creatively entrepreneurial people that is multifaceted, that's multidimensional, that's always emerging, that's always changing, that's always becoming something else, the sense of ourselves as creatively entrepreneurial people. Let's develop this really, really useful, practical, and fun situational creative intelligence. But here's some prompts for you, right? If you want to be thinking about what does it mean to be creatively entrepreneurial? Here's some prompts, right? How many of these prompts do you find in yourself? I'm not going to go through every single one of these words along the bottom. I could have 5 times that many words along the bottom because there's so many different aspects. I try to draw as big a circle as I possibly can as to what it means to be creatively entrepreneurial. Certainly it means seeing problems as opportunities to make things better. And I believe this is a really very core understanding of what it means to be creatively entrepreneurial. There's a bit of analysis that was done about 10 years ago by an economist. He was studying United Nations employment statistics, and he realized that in developing nations, in the developing world, 75% of all employment is self-generated. 75%. I would share that stat to validate this idea that we're all born with remarkable creative qualities, because those folks, don't have an education, certainly don't have an education in entrepreneurship, these 75% folks in the developing nations who are creating their own job. But what they've got is this natural human quality to be able to see problems as opportunities, right? They're looking in their community, they're looking in their village, they see a problem as an opportunity to make things better, to generate revenue, to serve their family. And what they need to do that is they need to be able to look at what other people have been looking at and seeing what nobody else has seen, right? They need to see that opportunity that nobody else has seen, which means they have to intentionally bust the status quo for new perspectives, right? They have to intentionally bust the status quo. Our brains very badly want to deliver a status quo view of the world. Status quo doesn't just exist out in the world. Our brain, because it works so very, very hard, wants to take a break. And so it wants to send you down the same neural pathways it always uses if you allow it to. So you have to intentionally bust the status quo to get the new perspectives, to see what others haven't been seeing, so that you can develop this problem as an opportunity. I consider those qualities to be sort of core to this undefined understanding of what it means to be creatively entrepreneurial. Here's some more of my favorites: being generous, and I'm going to talk about being generous in a minute. We've already mentioned a couple of times as we were warming up the importance of being adaptive and resilient, to be flexible in the inches and the minutes of your daily life, And I'm not going to read every one of these words along the bottom. I'll just wait for you all to take a look at those. And one of my favorites these days is there on the top line, and that's the word appreciating. I love how creative the double meaning of appreciation is, right? When I appreciate your idea, if when you bring to me a brand new creative idea and I listen to it, and I listen to it generously, and I listen to it appreciatively, and I speak from that appreciative listening, isn't it possible? And I think it might be is even likely that that idea will appreciate in value because of the appreciation, the appreciative listening that you gave to that idea. I think teaching is a wonderfully creative quality, wonderfully creative expression, right? It takes empathy. And teachers are very, very often servants and leaders at the same time, right? Leading through service and serving through their leadership. Teaching is a wonderful creative expression. And so there's many more there, many more creative expressions, and it's not a complete list by any means, not a complete list by any means. So since we are born with remarkable creative qualities, folks, since each and every one of us are born with remarkable creative qualities, if you are determined that you, and because our brains at the age of 55 plus are going through these biological changes that are inviting creative renewal, it's simple. If you want to have a major creative renewal in your life, it's simple. All you have to do is be intentional. All you have to do is be intentional. All you have to do is declare to yourself, declare to your loved ones, declare to the folks around you that from this point forward, you're going to be the most creatively entrepreneurial version of yourself that you can possibly be. And folks, when you declare it to yourself, to that voice in your head, to that sort of storytelling ego that that you carry around inside your noggin, that's telling you who you are and who you want to be, when you make that authentic declaration to yourself about the fact that you're going to be the most creatively entrepreneurial version of yourself you can be, you get an immediate victory. In that authentic declaration, you win. Because what happens in that immediate declaration is that you begin to see the world as a creatively entrepreneurial person sees the world. All the P professions, the poets, the physicists, the psychologists, and the philosophers, they all agree. We don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are. We don't see the world the way it is, and we don't see the world in its manifestations the way they are. We see the world the way we are. And so when you declare and mean it, and you're authentic in your declaration that from this point forward, you're going to be the most creatively entrepreneurial version of yourself that you can possibly be, you begin to see the world as a creatively entrepreneurial person begins to see the world. Now, I'm going to bet that change in your perspective on the world with that authentic declaration, I'm going to bet that it's not going to be a big change immediately. I'm going to bet that it's going to be an incremental change initially, that you're going to see the world a little differently initially. But notice I didn't say just incremental, just a little. There's great power in your creative life in the increment, right? If you can see a problem just a little bit differently today than you saw it yesterday, that slight difference in perspective might be exactly what it takes to unlock the opportunity that has been lying there and that you have not previously been able to see. So there's great value in the increment. And this happens sometimes, folks. My screen has frozen because I stayed on this for a little bit too long. So what I have to do is stop sharing and then share again. That's usually what it takes. Nope, didn't take that this time. Give me one more quick second, folks. I promise I'll. Stop sharing. Okay, great. So let's celebrate the increment. If you're going to be intentionally creatively entrepreneurial, I suggest that one of the great places to start to show your intention, right? You've declared to yourself that you're going to be creatively entrepreneurial. Now let's bring your declaration, your intention out into the world. Why not start with the language that we use? I can't think of a behavior that each of us does more than talk, right? And research showed that before COVID, I don't know how COVID has affected this, but pre-COVID, 16,000 words a day is what most of us said. That's an awful lot of opportunity to show our intentionality, right? That's an awful lot of opportunity to serve the world by finding just a bit more inviting, just a bit more generous ways to talk about it, slightly more engaging, a more questioning, more open-ended, more appreciative way to talk about the subject at hand. What a great place to practice your intentionality. And again, notice the power of the increment, right? I'm not saying to find the most generous way. Find one that's just a little bit more generous, right? If frequently in our language, we can just nudge our language towards a more creative and entrepreneurial expression of what's going on around us, great energy gets created. And here's one of my examples of the importance of language. Right? It's usual in our culture that when an opportunity comes along, we say we're going to take advantage of that opportunity. Hey, I wonder how I can take advantage of that opportunity. I wonder what will happen if instead of saying take advantage of the opportunity, which could mean I'm going to take the best for me and leave the rest for you, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to do if we say we're going to take advantage of the opportunity, but it points us in that direction. It allows us to do that incrementally. That's the direction we're moving in. What if instead, when an opportunity comes along, because we're being intentional about our language, because we understand that, of course, our thoughts shape our words, but let's be intentional about how our words shape our subsequent thinking. What if instead, when the opportunity comes along, we say we're going to create advantage from this opportunity, right? We're going to nurture it. We're going to care for it. We're going to cultivate it, right? We're going to invite really good people to come in and work on it with us. It doesn't by saying that language doesn't necessarily mean that's what we're going to do, but incrementally it points us in that direction. So I love the idea of being intentional in the language that I use. Folks, research out of the University of Munich. They created 4 different, very discrete creative exercises, each one measuring a very different creative cognitive process. They wanted to determine, does color have impact on creative performance? They tested lots of colors. They had people staring at various colors for 20 to 30 seconds and then taking the test. Only the folks that stared at the color green for 30 seconds had a change in their performance over these 4 exercises, folks, and they had a 25% improvement, a 25% improvement in their performance over these 4 exercises when they stared at green for 30 seconds. The green you see there, the green that is on a folder when you go to an office supply store is the green that the researchers used. Let me quickly talk about these 2 behaviors. I'm running close to my time. I'm sorry if I'm going a little bit long. I have in my work, I've identified 4 creatively entrepreneurial behaviors. There's the 4 of them. Let me talk just a minute about 2 of them. Being generous. I believe that being generous is being generative. If you look at the words at the bottom of my slide, you see that basically they are the same 2 words until you get to the end. When you're generous with the world wants to be generous back. When you're generous with the market wants to be generous in return. When you're generous with the friend's idea, you know what they do? They bring you more ideas and they treat you in a generous fashion. And wow, is it ever important to be playful? There's so many reasons why you want to be playful. It gives you a different perspective on the world when you're playful, but it's just, it refreshes you, right? We know how important it is to refresh these digital devices. Sometimes I think we forget about how important it is to refresh ourselves. And there's very little that's as refreshing as being playful. It's just having fun. And so those are 2 behaviors that I urge that you practice day in and day out. And then when you're working on a creative project of one sort or another, bring a focused attention to being generous and playful. Here's a 30-day cap. I will leave. I've got just 2 more slides. We're winding down the 30-day creative action program or 30-day cap is going to greatly improve your divergent discovery abilities, your ability to see lots of options. It's going to also improve your convergent creation qualities. You've got lots of options on the problem or the solution you're trying to solve. Convergent creation is you bringing the options together to the thing that you're going to do for the new concept, the new thing you're going to do. And here's the idea: once a day for 30 days, do one of 2 things, either something you've never done before or do something you do habitually in a radically different fashion. Never before have I turned and introduced myself to the stranger in the line behind me at the coffee shop. Never before have I walked out the door and the very first thing I see, I give it a new name. I've never done those things before. Those are examples of what I might do at a particular day as I'm working my way through a 30-day cap. Or something I've done habitually in a new manner. I brush my teeth right-handed. Today, I'm going to brush my teeth left-handed. I sleep with my head on the north side of the bed. Tonight, I'm going to sleep with my head, partner's permission, on the south side of the bed. And what's going on here, folks, is that every day you're kicking the status quo in the butt just a little bit every day, right? You're doing something different, intentionally doing something different, just a little bit every day. The accumulative effect can be very large. I would have my Duke students do this exercise. They were typically seniors in my class. They would write me a 5-page paper about their experience. And time again, that paper said, man, just after 10 days, after 15 days, I was walking across campus feeling like a first-year student again, seeing things fresh, seeing things new, seeing things in a way that I hadn't seen in quite some time. This can have a really great impact as part of this refresh that you're engaged in and this new commitment to be your most creatively entrepreneurial self. And if at the same time you were going to keep a journal, I don't know if any of you are keeping journals, and write about what you're experiencing, you'll get even more high leverage growth from it. So here's some resources for you folks. This Washington Post article points out that the great reason why you want to be your most creative and entrepreneurial self is that you're going to live longer. You're going to live longer and you're going to be happier doing it. Here's the URL for the article, but if you were to Google Washington Post creativity and aging, you'll find the article that I'm talking about. It's a summary of lots of research on that finds this direct correlation between people who are engaging in creative lives, in some case artistic, some case this broader creativity that I'm talking about. They live longer and they're happier living longer. I have just started, as of this most recent Sunday, a new radio show, Exploring Your Creative Genius. It's a half-hour Sunday mornings on your radio station in Chapel Hill, 97.9 The Hill, the same folks that carry the Tar Heel games. And so I want you to be aware of that. There's lots of free videos on being creatively entrepreneurial at this address. We're going to send all these slides to you all, folks. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear questions, comments, observations on any of this stuff, on anything that has to do with being creatively entrepreneurial. There I am. And so I'm going to stop sharing now. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, Mike, can you see my screen, the slide?
Great.
Great.
So welcome, Sheila and Dazzy, Ruth, Steve, and Kent. We really appreciate your being here today and sharing your time with us. As we talk about finding out who you are, we pulled together something that I call unwrapping your gifts. I happen to believe everybody here is like a gift package. And the gift package includes your personality, your interests, your experiences, your motivations, hopes, and dreams. And each of us is unique and different from one another. So picking up on that, let's see where that takes us. So next, we want to look at identifying your strengths. So this is one way to do it. One way is to look at what comes easily to do that you do easily and well. You may not necessarily like it, but you do it very easily and you're pretty good at it. So we're going to send each of you these worksheets and this short presentation and have you take a look at this, and you'll get a chance to circle. What I suggest is start with just your top 3 strengths, not more than 3. So you're going to look at the list and choose. And remember, you don't have to love the fact that you're good at it, but you do it well. And if there's something not listed that is one of your strengths, list them here. I'm also holding up a copy of a book called Strength Finders 2.0 by Tom Rath, and it comes with a free online assessment. The book costs about $16 at Amazon. I will send you information with the link and which edition to look for if you're interested in learning more about your strengths. The next one are your values. Very important. What principles are important to and for you? Some of these have slash marks. For instance, honesty, integrity, and authenticity could all be characterized as one value. Motivating and inspirational could be one value. Having a sense of humor. Comforting, supporting, that could be one value. So we've listed quite a few here. You also may have some others. But it's important to know your values. And not only to know yours, but how do you like other people with whom you live, work, collaborate, and do things? How do you like other people to express their values? What's comfortable for you? In this one, you'll notice we've added do it my way or the highway. That's the person that is the control freak. Or it's like the football coach that says there's only one way to do it. We've all had those kind of people in our lives. But do you like people that are dry and fact-based? Do you like people with a sense of humor? Do you like people who lead by example? Or invite you to come along with them? So each of these help define your values. Third, we go to your motivations. The actions that move you to take action. They energize you, they engage you, sometimes they provoke you. They do something that makes you angry or that upsets you. So we say here, circle the ones that fit, and you may come up with more. So your motivations, most people like to work because they're going to make money. Well, in addition to making money and supporting yourself and your family, is there anything else that motivates you? Do you like to be respected, appreciated by the people you work with, by the company, by your boss, by your spouse, by your family? Again, there's no wrong answers to any answers you give on these worksheets. These are personal and for you. So we say, you can add activities outside of work. We hope you do. So we then say, what interests you? Here's a short list. You may be interested in environmental justice, gun control, helping people who are homeless, people who are addicted, people who are struggling with dementia or are disabled. People trouble you if they are racist or have a problem with culture or gender issues. Again, no wrong answers. So we ask you to describe your own motivations. Fourth, then we wrap this up. We ask you to describe a highlight moment, a time when you were really inspired. This could be as plain and simple as your recipe for fried chicken that was a big hit at the recent church picnic. Or it could be you're getting a job that you really like doing, or helping someone who really appreciates what you've done for them, or maybe getting a raise, maybe graduating from high school or college. You might be the first one in your family. Oftentimes, women will enter the fact of a birth of a child here as being their highlight moment. And that's fine. It could be something as meaningful as that, or it could be something else. So in addition to writing it down, also write down, how did it make you feel? And that's important because that leads us to the next slide. You're going to pull this all together. So the combination of your strengths, values, motivations, and your highlight moment is a good description of you. And then with that, we say good things happen when you use and employ your strengths and you express your values, you follow your motivations, and in almost every case, you're helping others. And in so doing, you're going to be compensated in a variety of ways, either with salary or thanks or appreciation or others. When you do these things, you're going to make a significant contribution. So this quote is one of my favorites. The purpose of life, discover your gift. The work of life, develop it. The meaning of life, give your gift away. A gift is not a gift unless you give it. So we'll send these to everybody. We'll also send information on strength finders. If you have any questions on how to put together a plan for finding the kind of work or job you want, or your next activity, or your volunteering, or starting your own business, those are the activities that are available through employment services of the Department on Aging of North Carolina, Orange County. So our contact information is there. I'm Mike Komives. Sheila, Dazzy, Ruth, Steve, and Kent, thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, Lydia.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alison Smith, the volunteer coordinator for Volunteer Connect 55 Plus. That was great. That is my favorite quote as well, Mike. Discovering your gift, improving it, and giving it away. I'm a big fan of the Strength Finder as well, so thank you for that. And Carl, situational intelligence. I think that is something we can all look forward to. That was really well explained. All of this great information leads us nicely into talking about the volunteer opportunities that we offer at the Orange County Department on Aging. Volunteer Connect 55 Plus seeks to enrich the lives of our Orange County residents by engaging them in volunteer activities or as recipients of our volunteer services. As you see, we maintain a variety of both peer-led and department-directed programs, And this provides volunteers with a diverse array of flexible and structured volunteer opportunities, which we'll look at shortly. We facilitate access to high quality programs through the senior centers, programs like this that we're taking part in right now, as well as through Orange County communities. And we encourage volunteer leadership and creativity and provide ongoing support and appreciation to all volunteers. We do this through 3 guiding principles. The first one being autonomy. Volunteers have ownership over the projects that they undertake with us, and they're encouraged to contribute ideas and recommend modifications. We ask them, add their personal style. We let them know what the scope of the work is, and we ask them to bring their flair, their experience, their past, everything that they bring to the table to the opportunity with them. We also use mastery. Volunteers can cultivate and expand new and existing skills through individualized volunteer work. Something they've always have done and want to stay sharp in, or branching out into something brand new and learning it. Either way, they're always maintaining mastery. They're cultivating, they're growing, they're not being stagnant. And finally, and what I think really wraps all of these talks together, is purpose. Volunteers are matched with an opportunity that enriches their lives and provides a sense of meaning. As we all know, there are many benefits to volunteering. It combats isolation and loneliness. It provides a sense of purpose. It increases self-confidence. It expands our social connections, and it improves physical health. A lot of times I always think of that bumper sticker on a car that says, "Who rescued who?" I really feel that also applies to volunteering. Who is volunteering for who? Most times when people enter into a volunteer opportunity, they really feel they're getting more out of it than they're giving. And I hear that every day from many, many different people. So just knowing that, let's look at the volunteer opportunities at a ice cube snapshot, bird's eye view, because this is something that you can get at the Department on Aging's website or at either one of the senior centers. It's kind of a shopping list of the opportunities we have. It's broken into center-based opportunities and community-based opportunities. And with the center-based, you can see there's activities that go on in the center, events, wellness programs, a lot of the VITA or SHIP or anything that you need to come into the center to receive the service. That would be that. That is a single registration. You reach out to me, we work together, and we find a good connection. Additionally, we have community-based opportunities. Now, that is something where we're going to go out and offer something to the greater community, like what we're doing now through this senior resource team program, but also other programs that help you age in place, help you stay in community. That's going to require a little additional registration and orientation. I'm not going to go into that now because it's really not what we're talking about, but just know that we have a ton available. We help connect and find a perfect fit for you. And as you see at the bottom of there, my email is there, and the phone number if you have questions and you find interest. Another thing I want to talk to you about, and it marries right into volunteering, is our Project Engage program. This is a 13-week senior leadership program whose mission is to recruit and train Orange County older adults to become community resource leaders and to ultimately make their communities an ideal place to age. through an innovative and experiential learning program that consists of the 13 weeks, about 5 to 6 hours once a week. Project Engage focuses on relationship building between participants and with local leaders. And we visit local organizations and agencies, and we learn from relevant guest speakers. The ultimate goal is for Project Engage is to create senior leaders that serve as resource experts, sharing information with other adults in their communities, and to form self-directed senior resource teams that address resource gaps with their own unique projects. These teams play an integral, critical role in helping the Department on Aging make our county an ideal place to age well. There's a lot more about Project Engage, but I'm just going to give you that little introduction. Where you need to hear from the volunteering experience and this Project Engage experience is by someone who is puts the proof in the pudding. Sheila Evans is a longtime senior center participant, a Volunteer Connect 55 plus volunteer, and a Project Engage program graduate, as well as a member of the Mental Wellness SRT Senior Resource Team that is helped host this program. So I'm going to hand it over to Sheila now to let you know more about volunteering and Project Engage. Thank you, Sheila.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, good. My name is Sheila Evans, and many years ago, I was a nurse working in the community, married to my husband, who was a professor at UNC. We weren't really thinking about retiring, but he developed dementia. So suddenly our life was changed, and we decided we needed to retire a little early. So we both retired, and I spent the next 6 years taking care of him as a caretaker for him in the home. Well, during that time, I did lots of different things, but I did one wonderful thing, and that was I learned about Project Engage. Oh, there was this wonderful course I could take at the Seymour Center, and as Allison said, it taught seniors to become leaders in the community. So I got a caretaker once a week to stay with my husband, and I took this course. My husband actually passed 2 weeks after I graduated from Project Engage. So what did that provide for me? I was retired as a caretaker for all those years, not the kind of retirement I thought I was going to have, but a good one in many respects. And then suddenly I was in what I would call retirement number 2. I was alone, I was a widow, and I had to reinvent what my retirement was going to be in this second phase. Well, actually, the best thing that happened to me, as I said, was I took this course, and after I took this course, the graduates choose areas of expertise that they would like to learn more about and help with their community. So I joined the end of life committee, and I joined the caretaking committee, and I joined the mental wellness committee, and suddenly I was able to give back to my community. I suddenly had goals. I had a focus. I had friends that I met at the Seymour Center during the class. And so all of these things helped make this second retirement, which I'm still in and doing, very meaningful and very helpful. It helped with my socialization, certainly. It helps with my isolation, because I do live alone, but I have my second home, which I call the Seymour Center my second home because I'm here so much. And it gave me a group of people, new people to know and to work with. And at the same time, I took several classes because I had more time. I took a class on mindfulness, which was very helpful. But I also took a class on gratitude. And I can see the relationship when Carl was talking about generosity. And I can see the relationship and how much that class on gratitude has helped me over the years develop my new life as a person who's retired. So I want to say to you that I think the top things in my retirement and what has helped me is the volunteering, because of the socialization and because of giving back, the physical fitness, because I do a lot of fitness classes at the Seymour Center, and having a purpose, a goal with the socialization, and what I've learned, because there are so many wonderful programs. So I engage, I would like you to think about coming to the Seymour Center, taking classes, getting involved, perhaps in Project Engage, getting involved definitely in the volunteering, because not only has it helped me greatly in adjusting to being a retired person, but in the whole grieving process as when I lost my partner. So I think I'm just going to wrap it up that way and say that it's certainly, there's so many opportunities here, and I'd love you to go speak with Allison and come to our programs as you do, and I think it'll help greatly with retirement, which can be hard, and it can be absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Sheila, thank you so very much
You're
for
welcome.
your personal and inspiring story. That was great.
Thanks.
But I think Sheila's right. I think retirement can be very challenging, and there's a lot of unexpected challenges. And I think it can be great as well. So the Department on Aging is certainly here to help the community and help support and offer, supports where we can. So.
Right.
At this time, we're going to open up the floor for questions. Does anyone have any questions? All right, and there's nothing in the chat. Okay, well, that concludes our program for this evening. I would like to say thank you for attending tonight's program, and I hope you were all able to take something away from tonight. And if there's anything that you heard from anyone who spoke that resonates with you, or if you'd like more information, again, we will be sending out the contact information for our speakers and the materials as well. So you should receive those in the next few days.
Great.